Magandang gabi sa ating lahat. Welcome to our 365 Daily Devotion. At ngayon ay patuloy pa rin natin pag-aaralan ng ating series patungkol sa Bible Characters Edition. So ngayong gabi, ang pag-uusapan natin kung sino nga ba si Adam at si Eve. So ang pagsama natin ay who are Adam and Eve? God's original design for humanity. So Adam and Eve were created by God as the first human beings and placed at the very center of His good creation. So they were not result of chance, evolution, or human effort, but the intentional work of a wise and loving Creator, and formed Adam from the dust of the ground and breathed into him the breath of life. And from Adam, He lovingly formed Eve as His perfect counterpart. Together they represent humanity as God originally intended. So whole, dignified, relational, and dependent on Him. So before sin entered the world, Adam and Eve lived in perfect harmony with God, so with each other and with creation. So they were created in God's image, entrusted with responsibility, and blessed with meaningful work and relationships. So in their story, we see not only humanity's beginning, but also God's heart for people to know Him, reflect Him, and walk with Him in loving obedience. So sabi sa Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 to 28, and God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth." So God created man in His own image, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it." So sinasabi sa katuruan natin nung una, God created Adam and Eve to extend His relationship to humanity. So God did not create Adam and Eve merely to populate the earth. He created them for relationship. So from the beginning, God desired to dwell with His people, speak to them, and walk with them. So Adam and Eve enjoy direct fellowship with God. So something no other created being experienced in the same way. So this shows that humanity was designed not just for survival but for communion with God. So this relational purpose reveals that God is not distant or impersonal. No, He is a God who initiates, communicates, and desires intimacy with His creation. So Adam and Eve remind us that relationship with God is not a New Testament idea. So it has always been God's intention from the very beginning. Second is God created Adam and Eve to fill the earth with His image. So being created in the image of God means that Adam and Eve reflected God's character in a unique way. So they possess moral awareness, rational thinking, creativity, and the ability to love through them. So God intended His image to be multiplied across the earth as humanity increased. So this calling was not about power or dominion or domination for selfish gain, but about representing God's rule faithfully. As image bearers, Adam and Eve were to reflect God's holiness, wisdom, and care in every part of life. So humanity was meant to be a living testimony of who God is. Third is God created Adam and Eve to build nations that reflect His glory. So God's command to be fruitful and multiply was more than biological. It was missional. So families, communities, and nations were meant to reflect God's glory through obedience, justice, and worship. So Adam and Eve were the starting point of a world meant to honor God. So this teaches us that God's plan has always been global from the very first humans. God envisioned a world filled with people who know Him and live under His loving authority. So Adam and Eve's calling points towards or forward to God's redemptive plan fulfilled in Christ. Ang application natin o una, extend God's relationship into your relationships. So since God created humanity for relationship, believers are called to reflect that relational nature in their daily lives. This means cultivating relationships marked by love, honesty, forgiveness, and grace. So our homes, friendships, and communities should reflect God's character. So extending God's relationship also means inviting others into fellowship with Him. So as image bearers restored in Christ, believers becomes channels through which God's love and truth flow to others. Second is exhibit God's image by imitating Christ. Although sin damaged God's image in humanity, it was not destroyed. In Christ, that image is being restored. So imitating Christ means allowing His character, humility, obedience, compassion, and holiness to shape how we live. Exhibiting God's image is not about perfection but transformation. So daily surrender to Christ allows believers to reflect God more clearly in speech, actions, and attitudes. And lastly, expand God's rule through discipleship. So God's original command to fill the earth now finds its fulfillment in making disciples. Sharing the gospel and teaching others to follow Christ is a continuation of humanity's original mission to extend God's rule under His authority. Every believer participates in this mission through prayer, witness, service, and example. So discipleship is how God's kingdom expands and how His glory fills the earth once again. Ang discussion lang natin dito, how can you display the character of Christ to your family, friends, and people around you? Ang alternative questions natin, what aspects of God's original design stands out to you most? How can you be better reflect God's image this way? So if